Good morning. Hopefully you can hear us okay, and welcome to the webinar supporting the launch of the IDAP. I'll just hold off for a minute or so, just wait for others to join us. Lovely. I think we'll get started and we'll wait for others can join us as we go on. So welcome everybody. The Department of Health and Social Care is excited to bring you this webinar today on the recently launched Innovative Devices Access Pathway Pilot, and we're grateful to be joined by our partners sitting on the panel today. Some of you may have joined our webinar earlier this year on the launch of the Medical Technology Strategy, and this month's launch is another positive step forward in our work to implement the strategy and secure our vision of the right product at the right price and in the right place. The MedTech strategy includes the need to streamline the innovation pathway as a key priority, and the launch of IDAP is part of a package of initiatives that we're taking forward to support this ambition. The pilot is a partnership across Health Technology Wales, the MHRA, NHSE, NICE and the Scottish Health Technology Group, and demonstrates our commitment across the health system to establish a rules-based pathway for the adoption of innovative medtech into our NHS and to patients. We are joined today by representatives from our partner organisations, and I'll hand over to them to introduce themselves shortly and provide some reflections on what the IDAP means for their organisations. Our NHSE colleagues are unable to join us at the webinar today, but they are also a crucial partner in the delivery of IDAP, and will be providing commercial and adoption support to make sure the products have a route into the system. So I'll kick off by introducing myself. So hello everyone, I'm Sophie Walsh. I'm a Senior Implementation Lead here in the department, and I'll be chairing the session today. First off, I'll hand over to Susan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Unmute first would help. Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Susan Miles, I'm the Director of Health Technology Wales, and HTW is the national body that undertakes health technology assessments of non-medicines technologies within Wales. We're funded by Welsh Government and hosted within NHS Wales, but we're independent of both. We have a tripartite remit to investigate the identification, appraisal and adoption of health technologies in Wales. We produce national guidance that has adopt or justify status, with an expectation from Welsh Government that it's followed, backed up with an annual adoption audit that assesses the uptake of our guidance. So HTW is really pleased to be part of the Pan-UK IDAP project. We welcome IDAP's focus on innovative technologies that meet critical care system needs, aiming to get them to users at the earliest yet safe opportunity. For me and HTW, anticipated benefits for us and for IDAP partners include direct alignment with our remit and also the health and wealth policy ambitions in Wales. Opportunities, very importantly, to engage in early dialogue with developers and to signpost and support to develop evidence-informed value propositions. Securing a pipeline of early pre-regulation technologies for subsequent fuller health technology assessment, with opportunities to divide and conquer, so sharing our expertise and workload across the UK through collaborative pan-UK working. And all of this is focused on supporting high-impact technologies and expediting their adoption and associated benefits for all concerned. So in recent years, HTA bodies like ourselves have aspired to develop more agile processes across the complete technology development lifecycle. And IDAP, with its focus on the pre-regulation phase, presents a really good opportunity to help to realise this ambition. And we very much look forward to working with you to deliver its potential. Thank you. I'll hand over to MHRA colleagues now. Thanks.
Penny, would you like to introduce yourself and the MHRA?
Yes, I will. Thank you. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to go first and didn't want to butt in. So I'm Penny Wilson. I'm the Deputy Director of Innovative Devices within the MHRA. The MHRA, as many of you know, is very focused on the safety of medicines and devices, and that includes software as a medical device as well, and also blood products. So the MHRA reorganized itself a few years ago, and we go from science, research and innovation through quality, through healthcare quality and access, through to safety and surveillance. And we're really excited about IDAP and this partnership that we have as being a big part of our innovation. This fits very much into the medtech strategy, and it fits into our innovation office work as well. So really, I think our remit is well known to everybody, but very happy to take questions later on. I think we should say that we're all about, making sure that patients are safe. And so that's the heart of our regulation. So being able to support IDAP in making sure that organisations come to the table with the right evidence and the right data for regulatory approval is extremely important to us. We also do a lot of international work. Many of you will have heard of the IMDRF, and it's important that we think about the standardisation and harmonisation of standards. Thank you. But I maybe should add, I am joined by friends here and by colleagues. So I don't know, Sophie, whether you want us to introduce everybody from the MHRA at this point or not.
So I think Alex is kindly taking us through the IDAP pathway. So we'll introduce himself for that section, but thank you. Jeanette, would you like to go and introduce yourself next?
Thank you very much. Also delighted to be here. I'm Jeanette Kiesel. I'm the Director for Scientific Advice at NICE. NICE is the health technology assessment body for England, for covering both pharmaceuticals and, of course, health tech, including devices, diagnostics and digital health technologies. NICE is delighted to be a partner in IDAP as well. In addition to it being a crucial part of supporting the HSC's medtech strategy, IDAP also fits with NICE's 5-year transformation plan. So at NICE, we are changing the way that we work to focus on what matters most. IDAP is specifically designed to identify and support the most impactful technologies that will make the greatest difference to both the NHS and, of course, to patients. So it's absolutely fantastic that NICE can be a part of that. It's really great to be able to work in this pan-UK partnership way of working to support these impactful technologies along their whole development path through the development to patient access. And it's really important we work in this collaborative manner to ensure that the evidence that's collected meets the needs of all the decision makers across the UK, both the regulatory needs and the health technology assessment needs in the different jurisdictions. So yeah, very excited to be able to launch this, and NICE is very excited to be part of IDAP.
Thank you, Jeanette. And Ed, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Sophie. Hi all, good morning. My name's Ed Clifton and I lead the work of the Scottish Health Technologies Group, or SHTG. SHTG is part of Healthcare Improvement Scotland, and our role is to provide advice to the health service on the use of medical technologies in Scotland. So we're extremely similar to NICE and Health Technology Wales in that we're a health technology assessment agency, and therefore our advice is based on the same kind of relatively rapid HTA methodologies. We're a small team up here at SHTG, and not just because of that, but I hope it goes without saying that we can't look at all medical technologies in Scotland either in use or proposed for use. And this has its challenges, of course, but it also, we kind of see it as an opportunity that it forces us to think very much, about making sure that our work is aligned to service asks and needs in Scotland. And this is how we kind of remain relevant and impactful in our space. That said, there is, of course, a balance between responding to questions from the service, but of course, kind of leading the way in identifying and proposing improvements towards better quality and safe healthcare. And what I mean by that is we want to be part of finding new innovative medical technologies that will make a difference. And this latter point features amongst our kind of strategic goals for SHTG in terms of leading the assessment of innovations in Scotland. We want to work with industry to ensure that the best information is available to inform decisions, and generally we want to help kind of create the conditions, I guess, alongside other stakeholders, of course, for identifying and accelerating adoptions of innovations in Scotland. And these are some of the reasons why I really do believe that IDAP offers that fantastic opportunity to improve access to medical technologies across Scotland and the UK for the benefit of patients, delivery of services, and the life science sector itself. And in particular, I guess it's that collaboration between not just all the partnership, but kind of MHRA and HTA partners. It means it's uniquely placed, I feel, to deliver the right support, the right regulatory and evidence support at the right time, and in a way that I think actually could fit quite neatly alongside other innovation adoption initiatives in Scotland. I guess as a final point, these things are never easy at all. I suppose our collective experience will tell us that. But I suppose if we all get behind the pilot, then yes, even any short-term wins for those that are successful, those applicants that are successful in the pilot, will hopefully translate into longer-term wins for the wider system. So that's certainly our aim. So we'll give it our best shot. So thank you very much. Back to you, Sophie.
Thank you. Thank you to the panel for joining and for all the hard work so far on getting IDAP and launching to the pilot. I'll just run through the agenda now of what we have coming up. So we have an overview of IDAP being presented by Becky, our colleague at NICE, an overview of the application process with our colleague Alex at MHRA, and then the final portion of the session will be a Q&A where we would love to welcome your questions on the application process or IDAP in general. So I would just pass over to Becky, who will take us through the first item on the agenda.
Thanks, Sophie, and thank you to all of our panellists as well for giving us a flavour of what's in store for IDAP. My name's Becky Owens and I'm a technical advisor at NICE. I'm going to introduce you to IDAP a little bit more and talk you through what the pathway looks like. This might be familiar to any of you that has seen any of our previous webinars, but thankfully Alex is going to follow on from me and he'll go through a demonstration of the application form, which might be really helpful at this stage. Could you go to the next slide, please, Alex? So I think you've already heard this already from our partners, but obviously this is a partnership project that we're launching and we're piloting. We have our partners here today, so Health Technology Wales, MHRA, ourselves at NICE, Scottish Health Technology Group, and also NHS England, who have joined us alongside DHSC. This is a pre-regulatory pathway. So the key to this pathway is that we're looking for earlier stage. So we're looking for technologies that haven't yet got their access to the UK market, but they show real potential to meet unmet needs within the health and care system and look as if they're going to be transformative to the way that we care for patients. Now, the important thing here is that we're trying to produce a pathway that's a joined up approach between all of our partners. So we're combining regulation with HTA assessment alongside reimbursement so that we can, for those really important technologies, those ones that look like they're going to have really meaningful benefits to patients and to the health and care system, we're going to offer a streamlined approach through what can be quite a challenging landscape, as I'm sure you're all aware. Within that, there's going to be the opportunity to receive joint scientific advice. There'll be the opportunity to receive advice around the quality management system, potential for early access to market through the exceptional use authorisation granted by MHRA, as well as post-market considerations, so post-marketing surveillance, further evidence generation for HTA, and thinking about then how you might dock into downstream HTA guidance development or reimbursement pathways. So there are objectives with IDAP, but if I move to the next slide, we've got a model that talks you through each of those stages. Now this is a complicated model initially, but I will talk through it step by step. So initially we're at the stage of IDAP expression of interest. So we're at that very, very beginning stage where we're asking you all to consider whether or not you meet the eligibility criteria and to send across an expression of interest if you're interested in being part of this pathway. The next step within this pathway is what we're referring to as a target development profile. And this is where all of the partners involved in IDAP, after sifting and selecting through the expression of interest, they will select technologies and invite them for this target development profile. And this will be an individual meeting between the company and the partners of IDAP, where we'll sit down and we'll talk through your clinical development plans, where you're up to, what stage of development you're at, where you are along your adoption journey and regulatory journey. And based on that conversation, the partners within IDAP will consider which of the tools available through IDAP, which we'll talk about in a moment, would be most suitable at your stage to be able to benefit you the best. Now, at the moment, it's important to point out that we're piloting this pathway. So all of this is subject to change. We're still exploring different options. And unfortunately, for the sake of this pilot, we can only select 8 technologies. The 8 technologies that we're going to be looking to select will be a portfolio approach, so trying to make sure that we're able to select technologies at different stages that look at different disease areas and have different types of medical devices, so that we can trial this pilot as fully as possible to ensure it's appropriate for everybody. In theory, once this is launched post-pilot, you would run through this pilot from the left to the right. So you'd have your target development profile. We'd consider which of the following tools would be applicable, and then we'd start to run those tools. So the tools available, which I'll talk more about on the next slides, are joint scientific advice, QMS support, a coordinated 30-day review. So this is a combination of a clinical investigation review through MHRA and also an ethics review through HRA to look at your clinical investigation plans. So these are for earlier stage technologies. Following that, technologies will go on to their clinical investigation trial if they haven't already done so, or if they've not already started those trials. And there'll be a 6-month data review during that period to see whether or not there's the performance and safety data needed in order to consider exceptional use authorization. Companies will still have to complete a formal EUA application, but if they are appropriate, then through IDAP, they could be granted EUA during the pilot. And this would allow them earlier access to the UK market ahead of their conformity assessment and allow them to start generating that really important real-world evidence within the NHS. Following a period of exceptional use authorization, we have a tool for market access forum. This is a safe harbour meeting where you can join the partners of IDAP alongside commissioners, healthcare assistants, patients, and they'll all be able to input as to what some of those levers and barriers of introducing your specific technology onto the UK market and trying to gain that nationwide adoption, what some of those challenges might be. Once you've had that safe harbour meeting, we move into essentially the end of the IDAP pathway as it stands at the moment, but we are exploring whether or not there's the potential to work with the notified bodies, approved bodies, and also dock into HTA appraisals. So we're obviously all on this call already, the HTA bodies, the HTA organisations. We're looking to see whether or not we can then dock into those downstream evaluations so that you're more seamlessly being able to move through those appraisal processes. And then finally, we're working with NHS England around some of that reimbursement support to see how we're able to dock into what reimbursement support might already be available and what might be coming. I should point out as well, you might have lots of questions on this slide, but we will have a Q&A at the end of this. So please do keep a note of all your questions, add them to the Q&A and we'll come back to them. Alex, could we go to the next slide, please? I don't think that's moved on for me.
Sorry, it should be coming soon. I'm on to the next slide now.
just giving everyone plenty of time to absorb that model. Still not moved on for us, Alex.
I'll try moving on and back again. So let me know if that's come up. If not, I have a colleague on standby who could present the slides instead.
We might need to try that option, please, Alex. Is that Tierney who's gonna?
Yes, please.
Just slide 8, please, Tierney. Perfect, thank you. So I've talked through these a little bit already. So these are the tools or the offers available through IDAP. Now these first 3, I've got 2 of these slides. There's 6 I'm going to talk through. The first 3 are really for the earlier stage technologies, still applicable for some later stage ones, but in particular these ones we'd be expecting the earlier stage technologies to benefit from. So we have joint scientific advice. This is really an opportunity to receive input from all of our partners around what data collection protocols you might have in place, where there might be gaps within that, what kind of evidence you're going to need in order to demonstrate value at an HTA stage, whether there's gaps in your regulatory evidence. So we're really going to look at what you have as a whole, and in some cases we can be much more specific and pinpoint based on your specific trial designs and clinical development plans, and really hone in on what's going to benefit you as a company and your innovation in order to be able to demonstrate the requirements that you need in order to get through regulatory hurdles and health technology assessment hurdles. The next point is clinical investigation. So MHRA have developed a coordinated review with HRA, which is what I talked about on the last slide. Now this is for companies ahead of their clinical investigation that are preparing to start their clinical investigation trials, to really make sure that they're set up and appropriate, and to give them that support and advice and make sure that they can be signed up alongside an HRA ethics review. This is an expedited process, so typically this would take 60 days, but for IDAP it's being done within 30 days to try and streamline that process. And finally, there's the QMS audit, which I think we've touched on already, but really trying to make sure that your quality management systems are the best that they possibly can be and fit for purpose, and that you're in a position to make sure that those quality management systems are going to support you throughout the life cycle of your devices. And next slide, please, Tierney. And this is my last one, and then I'll be handing over to Alex, who can do the demonstration, which might be more interesting. But these 3 other ones are, well, for system navigation, that's essentially an all-rounder tool. So that's no matter what stage you are, this is something you're going to benefit from. And it's really a liaison person within our IDAP team that can help to support you navigate the ecosystem, which we know can be complex and confusing, but ensuring that you're not only aware of the tools available through the IDAP, but also signposting where relevant to other important initiatives that are currently available to you and might be of interest, as well as keeping you abreast of what's upcoming, what your next stages and challenges might be within that route to adoption. The next one is exceptional use authorization. Now, this isn't strictly a tool. This is something that MHRA has the potential to grant, that we're seeing whether or not we can incorporate into the IDAP pathway. And it will give, as I've mentioned previously, the opportunity to selected technologies, the ones that are at an appropriate stage with the appropriate evidence and safety, to be granted early market access. And this allows you to go to market and start using that technology, allow patients access to that technology where safe. And finally, the access forum, which again I've mentioned already. These safe harbour meetings where you can have really open, candid discussion with system partners, commissioners, people that will be using your technology, procuring your technology, and really understand what some of those challenges you might face when you get to those stages might be, and how you can evidence and demonstrate your technology to overcome those. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Alex now, so he can do a run through of the application process and talk a little bit more about eligibility. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the program manager working in the MHRA in the Innovation Accelerator. I'll just do a quick demonstration for you of what the application process looks like. So I will present my screen again and do an introduction. So in that slide, there's a link, and it should take you to this web page. And I'll paste a link in the chat as well, so people can follow along afterwards. This is our IDAP pilot web page with various information on it. It's quite useful to go through before you approach the application form. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll go down to how to apply. It's worth noting there's a template of the form as well. We ask you to prepare evidence in advance because there's a 2-hour window where you need to complete the application. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to save your progress and go back into the form. So we'd really strongly encourage you to take a look in advance. So to open up the web form, you click on that link, and this will take you to the application form. Please do read through the guidance on the first page because it'll tell you what evidence you need to submit in advance. And it also gives you that warning that you can't save the progress as you go along. So a couple of the points will be evidence of a quality management system and also letters of support from specialty clinical leads within relevant care organisations. I won't go through all of the details on this page just in the interest of time. After clicking on start, you'll be taken to the eligibility criteria, which will be yes or no whether you are eligible for the pilot. Following this page, it will take you through your details, some of the innovation criteria, so what we'll base your scoring on for the product, and then it'll take you through some regulatory requirements and that kind of thing. So that was a very brief demo. We will have a Q&A for any of those specific questions that you do have afterwards, and I'll hand you back to Tierney to present the slides again. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yep, sorry, I'll go into the timelines for the pilot. So we're between the pilot launch and the application close date. So first of all, the pilot launch, that was a couple of weeks ago. There will be a 6-week period that will keep the applications open. So please do apply to the pilot before the 29th of October. Following this, we'll score the applications in our IDAP delivery group. And then, as mentioned, 8 technologies will be selected to take place in the pilot. The outcomes for that will be in December of this year. Following that, we'll have a brief period of scheduling the TDP meetings with successful applicants, and those will take place from around the 16th of January all the way through to April, with potentially some optional dates if applicants can't make the first few that we put out there. Following the TDP engagement, so the meetings with the applicants about their product, we'll have tool engagements which will be recommended in the TDP roadmap, which is sort of a roadmap to say what you should do or what should approach in your product development life cycle to really address any gaps or any of the useful tools that we'd like to offer as part of the IDAP. So those will take place probably 1 month following the last TDP engagement that you have with the IDAP partners when we produce that roadmap and send it over to you. So those are the timelines.
Lovely, thank you, Alex, and to Becky as well for taking us through those slides. So we're now into the final portion, which is the Q&A. And we'll be taking questions that we've received in advance. And please, if you have any other questions, please do submit them in the Q&A bar to the right-hand side. Just so you know that for any questions that we run out of time to respond to today, we will be responding to them and we'll follow up with some correspondence shortly. So without no further ado, we'll kick off into the Q&A portion. So the first question is, can devices apply if they're already CE marked? And I'll pass to Susan if you would like to respond to this.
Sure. So the simple answer is no. So IDAP is specifically focused on the pre-regulatory phase, and it's intended to help companies and developers access the UK market and transition through to UK adoption. So technologies that already have CE mark or UKCA certification already have access to the UK market. So no, unfortunately not. It is for those that currently do not have the regulatory status. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And another question we've had through, which may be a short and sweet answer, is does the IDAP include AI technologies? And I'll hand over to Ed for this one.
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, yes, it better be short and sweet now. Yes, short answer is yes. It's all medical devices are eligible, including software as a medical device as well. So yes.
Thanks, Ed. So moving on to a few more questions we've had received through the sign up form. So handing back over to Susan, do devices have to meet all the criteria?
So yes, all criteria must be met in order for an innovation to be considered for the IDAP pilots, and the extent to which innovations that are submitted meet that will be assessed within the IDAP delivery group that Alex mentioned, with input from experts and others through that process, and those will be helped to make decisions about which innovations will ultimately be best suited to proceed. The one qualifier to that perhaps is that I believe that there may be some softening of the wording round about the quality management system, and perhaps Penny, you might like to pick that up from MHRA. Thank you.
Yes, I can certainly pick that up from the MHRA's perspective. We're really interested that organisations that apply have considered their quality management system and have got the necessary paperwork and processes and procedures in place. However, we realise that the wording in the application form at the moment is probably a little too severe. So we're going to reword it to really draw out that or equivalent piece. So certainly at the time of application, we aren't expecting an organisation to be ISO 13485 accredited. And you'll note in the model that Becky presented, actually there is support for us to discuss QMS with individual organisations. But what we don't want, and the reason we don't want it, is because IDAP funding is until March 2025, and we need to trial and test as many of our tools as we can before that time. So we're not going back a little earlier in the technology readiness level, which as IDAP matures, we probably will. So we will be changing the wording for the quality management system. We don't want an organisation not to have thought about it or not to have processes in place and procedures that are going to be state of the art. But you don't have to have that accreditation, so we will change that.
Thanks so much, Penny. And while we have you, I have another question which may fall into your remit, which is how advanced must the development of devices be in order to qualify for this programme of support?
So yeah, thank you for that question. You'll see that in the application form, we do talk about prototypes being very close to having been locked down. And the reason for that is, if an organisation has developed something and then we start clinical investigations, but actually it's not a final prototype and it's going to have to be tweaked, then what will happen is that organisation will simply have to repeat all that work, and we want to avoid that. So it has to be quite a long way along its development again for the pilot. And as we come to a more mature IDAP, we might be able to have conversations with organisations and then leave them to work with partners and different companies and academia for maybe 2 years plus to actually refine and get down to a fixed prototype. But for the pilot, we really are expecting people to come to the table later. We totally appreciate that in doing that, we will not have the same freedom perhaps and capability to tweak things as much as we might as IDAP matures. But I think we have to be sensible and say, how do we get as much as possible out of IDAP? And that is by testing as many tools as possible and by taking a portfolio approach to what we will select as the 8 projects. I hope that makes sense.
Lovely, thank you, Penny. So we have a couple of questions here which will fall to NICE's remit. So Jeanette, how are unmet needs for IDAP being identified?
Thanks for the question, Sophie. So we've aligned the eligibility criteria to the life sciences vision missions. The reason for that is because that's gone through extensive piece of work to identify those areas as areas of unmet need in the NHS. So that's why we're aligning to the life sciences vision missions. The other things that we are doing as part of the pilot is getting clinical experts to review each application and state recommendations to whether it meets an unmet need. And as mentioned previously, NHS England are also involved in this partnership project, and we'll have clinical representatives on the selection panel, and we'll be able to get specific experts involved in the areas where we have applications. It's also important to note that in the application process, the developer is asked to give evidence that the technology meets an unmet need, and that'll be really important for us when we go through the selection process to be able to ascertain whether these technologies are actually addressing the needs that we have identified in the NHS.
Brilliant, thanks so much. And another question for you would be, how does this route work with other options such as the AAC and AHSNs? Will this become a single point of entry?
Great question. So in the development of IDAP, we've been liaising with other system partners such as the AAC and the AHSNs. The IDAP has been worked up over several years now, and certainly in the first year we held workshops with other system partners such as the AAC and the AHSNs. We're currently actively working with the innovation service team at the AAC to work out the synergies between the different initiatives and look in whether in the future there might be a way of having an application process come in through the innovation service, but certainly there should be links up so that there's information on the innovation service, so that if you've registered your product on the innovation service, you get information about IDAP and how to apply for IDAP. In terms of whether the IDAP will become a single entry point, that's not the vision for IDAP. IDAP is going to be reserved for technologies that have the greatest impact, that meet the unmet needs of the NHS and patients in the NHS. So it will always be a more select group of technologies that will be given this enhanced pathway support. It's not a single entry point for all medical technologies coming into the NHS, and would highly recommend using the innovation service as that portal for registering your innovation on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And one final one while you're in the hot seat. Do you develop diagnostic guidance, or would it be an evidence generation plan only?
So as Becky mentioned at the beginning, we the IDAP is a pre-regulatory and pre-HTA pathway. So at the moment, we're working out how that early support in IDAP docks in to, for example, the health technology assessments that NICE and the other HTA bodies would do. So we're working out how, for example, IDAP technologies might well be eligible and dock in to our early value assessment process at NICE. There might be very good candidates for docking into that early value assessment process, and that's something that we are going to work through as part of the pilot. So in IDAP, it's an early support pathway. It's not producing a published evidence generation plan or guidance as part of the pathway, but it is going to dock into downstream guidance producing processes. And in terms of the diagnostics piece, as previously mentioned, yes, diagnostics are eligible along with other devices and digital products.
Thank you, Jeanette. That was really helpful. So next up, we have a question for Ed. Will the IDAP support Scottish-based companies and/or pathways into Scottish health boards?
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, it's the short answer again for that one is yes, and exactly how, I suppose it's still to be determined, as we've been talking about, how it plugs into the HTA processes and all the areas is still to be determined. But at the very least, obviously, we'll be aware through our work at SHTG about the technologies that are going through the pilot, and they'll all be flagged to the health boards in kind of our routine channels of distributing information to the health boards. There are also very specific opportunities, I feel. I trust the questions come from someone with a knowledge of some of the landscape in Scotland, and we've got a new accelerated national innovation adoption pipeline, and my hope is that absolutely anything that comes through the IDAP process will plug in quite neatly to that, and there's an opportunity for kind of funding and implementation across the health boards through that ANIA process. So yes, in short, there should be a couple of mechanisms in which we can make sure that any of the IDAP outputs feature very strongly in our communications with Scottish Health Board. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So quite another question has come through which I can respond to, which is, what date will the first technologies be selected? Why is this only open for 6 weeks and not all the time? So as Alex ran through previously, through the timeline, the first technologies will be selected in December 2023, ready to begin TDP engagements from January 2024. This is the pilot phase of the IDAP with the aim to test the main elements of the pathway and provide informative learning and feedback, which will help build the future IDAP. So the IDAP pilot is working to timeframes that will enable partners to deliver outputs by March 2025. So EOIs being open for 6 weeks will allow selection of the 8 products and more time for them to develop their TDPs with the partners, and more time for the support when they're moving through the pathway, so the products are ready for reimbursement support into the NHS. Next up, we have a question for Penny. Will this pilot scheme be a one-off, or will the MHRA develop a similar long-term pathway?
The idea is to make IDAP sustainable going forward. So we've got the pilot, we're going to select 8. I noticed there's a couple of other questions that are related to this. One is, can people make more than one application? And the answer to that is yes. You can make as many applications as you want to, but please just look at the eligibility criteria and make sure that they fulfill that. So you can make those applications. However, this is not something that we're going to keep open all the time whilst we run the pilot. And going forward beyond March 2025, we are optimistic that we will have designed a sustainable program going forward, and that then we may have, chunks of time when we want people to apply, but we haven't thought all that through yet. We are going to learn from the pilot as to how we do that.
Thanks so much, Penny. And another question which I can respond to, which is that the template of the form is not actually on the IDAP website. So following feedback, the template of the form has now been added to the web page and now is available for download. And we'll pop a link which will signpost that in the chat. And another question, this one for Jeanette. Could this pathway be used for an existing product that's been advanced, that's underutilised and provides great benefits for patients?
So if there's an advanced product that already has its CE or UKCA mark, then it would not be eligible, as we've previously mentioned. So we are looking for pre-regulatory products, and then we can give that combined pan-UK partnership support to support both the regulatory and the downstream health technology assessment and access support. So if it's an advanced product already on the market, it would not be eligible for the IDAP.
Thanks so much. And next up is a question for Penny. Will the exceptional use authorisation to be used in the pilot use the pre-existing regulation, or will new legislation be laid down for the pilot/final IDAP model?
So for the pilot, we're basically going to be using what we have for our exceptional use authorisation. Our ability to do that actually comes from the 2002 regulations and from various exemptions. So we will do that. But one of the things we want to learn from is actually, is there going to be something which is akin to the exceptional use authorisation, but actually a little bit broader? But in order to, if you look at the criteria for us actually granting an EUA, it is the unmet clinical need being really critical as part of that. And that's a big part of IDAP. You know, it's to address unmet clinical needs and give patients access to new technologies that as early as possible in a safe environment.
Thanks so much. Next up is a question for Ed. Will the IDAP be a continuous application process? If we are not ready for the closing date on the 29th of October, will there be a second intake?
The answer to that one, I suppose, no, is a short answer there. So there won't be a second intake as part of the pilot itself, and then hopefully, you know, following a successful pilot and the feedback supports the continuation of IDAP, then yes, there'll be hopefully, I don't want to say continuous, but a number of different intakes as part of the work going forward. So yeah, that's the plan. That's if we can get right what I was talking about earlier on, if we can get this pilot right, then hopefully we're going to kind of short-term wins for what will be a small amount of companies. I accept that, we accept that. We'll hopefully open it up for an improved system thereafter. As I say, that's the hope. Thank you, Sophie.
Lovely, thanks, Ed. Another question for me. So will we be able to have a copy of today's slides, and will there be a recording? Yeah, we are happy to provide the slides, and there will also be a recording of today's webinar, which we will circulate the link for after the session. So next up is a question for Penny. There's no involvement from Northern Ireland Department of Health. Will that prevent Northern Ireland companies from participating?
No, it doesn't prevent them from, a quick answer, it doesn't prevent Northern Ireland companies from participating and applying for IDAP.
Lovely, short and sweet, thanks Penny. Just have a look at other questions that are coming through. So we've had some questions through the form around the focus on the life sciences vision missions. So and why the focus on the vision missions. So the missions were developed in consultation across government, NHSE, industry, academia and charities, with the intention to create the right conditions for industry, academia and NHS to come together to focus on the major causes of morbidity and also reflect the long-term plan. So the life sciences missions have been selected because they drive significant mortality and morbidity in the UK and globally, and therefore are the appropriate target for the pilot. However, as mentioned, the pilot will provide learnings to inform the development of a full IDAP, and that will include on the selection criteria. And it looks like we are back to Penny, if that's okay for the next question. Could we expand on the clinical investigation sites required in the UK? Do we need a signed contract with the sites to conduct studies, as a letter of support is required in the application?
So I think we want to have confidence that an applicant has at least started and agreed sites for clinical investigations. We are not looking for a letter that demonstrates that. Where we are looking for letters are letters of support, or a letter of support for clinical unmet need. You know, does a clinician actually believe, or a clinical individual, not perhaps necessarily a clinician, believe that something is indeed an unmet clinical need. I think that's the important piece there. What we don't want to do is, again, because it's a pilot and it's quite short, if somebody comes to us and applies for the pilot but actually hasn't thought about where the clinical sites might be, it could take some considerable time to find those sites, and to find sites that will give sufficient evidence with enough patients for statistical viability. So we want people to be as far on that process as they can be. We are not putting out of scope organisations that have already started their clinical investigations. And if you remember the model that Becky put up and went through, we're not expecting everybody to join on the left-hand side and go through everything. Organisations will be joining at different points. So we might actually find that organisation applies and has gone through a lot of the clinical investigation and is quite close to getting a CE mark, sorry, a UKCA mark, or possibly, you know, working with Europe and getting a CE mark as well. So yeah, that's where we sit within that. So definite ongoing discussions. Also, one thing that we must draw out, I mean, going back to the question about can organisations in Northern Ireland apply? Yes, they can, but actually we haven't put out of scope organisations applying from anywhere in the world, provided they satisfy the criteria.
Lovely, thanks so much, Penny. So Jeanette, I'll be coming to you for a couple of questions, if that's okay. Are you planning to involve the AHSNs in the Access Forum that discusses or addresses NHS adoption?
So when we gather the relevant experts for an Access Forum, we scope it carefully with the company, we unpick that particular needs for that particular product, and then invite the relevant experts. And if an AHSN is relevant there, then absolutely we'll engage with them at that stage. But that's not the only place in the pathway where the AHSNs can get involved. We are in discussions with them about how they can support technologies in different parts of the process as well.
Great, thank you. And one more question. Have industry input into the IDAP pilot process being built?
Yes, absolutely. So in the early stages of development, when we were scoping and developing the foundations of IDAP, we ran several workshops to explore the different parts of the pathway, such as the unmet needs and the application, the eligibility criteria and the tools, and members of trade industry associations and representatives from companies were involved in those workshops, which we're very, very grateful for. And of course, because these are pilots, we'll also gather feedback from the innovators who are in the pilots as well. And that's a really important evaluation step to be able us to reflect on how the pilots have worked for those particular companies or developers, and be able to evolve the pathway as we look towards the full launch of it post-pilot. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeanette. And Penny, coming to you for the next question. At what stage are partnerships with UK conformity assessment bodies in RE downstream market access processes for successful IDAP technologies?
So we are already in discussion with the approved bodies, not surprisingly, within the UK. to see how we can dovetail their conformity assessment with the exceptional use authorization that we'll be granting under IDAP for appropriate technologies. It's really critical that we work very closely with them, and we are designing how going forward, how we can streamline things in the best possible way for us to work together. The approved bodies, also has an ISO 13485 rolling review, which we can engage with, and we want to bring approved bodies to the table for the initial technology development profile meetings. So we will be working very closely with them. And we will provide more details going forward as well, keeping you up to speed with what those relationships are.
Great, thank you, Penny. And the next question is for Susan. Will there be a clinical study and will there be financial support?
So yes, help in terms of the clinical investigation and support for that, but there is no direct financial support under the IDAP scheme as it is at the moment. And also I noticed there was a question about costs. There aren't any direct costs either. So currently within the IDAP programme, the tools and support that are offered will be offered free effectively to the technologies that are selected to progress through the pilot. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Susan. Just looking for the next question. I'll scroll through.
Sophie, just one reflection on a previous question that was asked around advanced technologies. I think we said quite a few times now that those technologies that already have a CE or UKCA mark and are already on the market are not eligible for IDAP. So I think it's worth just highlighting that there's other support out there for those technologies, particularly if they haven't had the take up that's expected, but should result in clinical or economic benefits. So I would really recommend companies to submit those technologies to the innovation service, and they can be picked up by various different partners across the health system across the UK. You can access support for those technologies outside of IDAP from the various different partners, such as NICE, I think, and Health Technology Wales, and the Innovation Service is absolutely the best place to start with that. So there's definitely support out there for those technologies, but not through the IDAP.
Thank you, Jeanette. And one final question, which I can field. So we've had a few questions asking about the number of pilots and when the next intake will be. So the 8 technologies selected will be specific products, and further intake may be beyond March 2025. So the IDAP, as I mentioned before, is a key part of the work within the medtech strategy about for the implementation of the innovative and dynamic markets. And so a key focus within this is establishing an end-to-end innovation pathway. And the department see IDAP as a key priority to progress this. So the learnings from the pilot will inform the future development of a full IDAP. And so as we're getting towards the end of the session, for further queries, please forward these on to idapinquiries@mhra.gov.uk, which I think was probably popped in the chat as well, but we'll follow up with the webinar link and that email address, and also respond to any questions we haven't had time to respond to today. So just bringing the meeting to a close, I'd like to thank the panel so much for joining us today, and to our attendees for joining. The webinar has been recorded, and there is the central mailbox for any further questions. And we will pick up shortly with any questions we didn't manage to respond to today. And that'll draw us to the end. Thank you everybody for joining so much, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.